Hello, Saltines.
Hello, everyone.
We're back.
Yes, we had to take another week off because life gets very, very busy and we are burnt out.
I'm just gonna say it. We took a week off because we needed a fucking day off, and we don't get paid to
Well,
do
we
this.
also took a day off because I came home that day and was like, "Fuck everyone!"
Yeah, he was in the foul mode.
And I was like, I'm like, I don't have the energy or the desire to record a podcast tonight.
Exactly. And then I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I'll just do one on my own. And then I was like, no, it's not the same without Mike.
Well, I think you also realized that you really didn't have anything to talk about on your own.
Actually, I did. Thank you. You're not the only one who comes up with podcast things. Just because I don't have an entire essay written on my phone to talk about doesn't mean I don't have ideas.
God, well, fuck me for being organized.
You're a Pisces. You're not supposed to be organized.
But I have a no, that doesn't make sense either.
Exactly.
I must have like a Virgo or something happening in like maybe like one of my other houses. Like
It's because it's something to do with your Saturn.
what?
I think it's something to do with your Saturn.
But I love my Saturn. Saturn and I are buddies.
I am also friends with Saturn.
Stay away from my man. We have listener questions and things.
Yeah, we have listener questions and some other stuff.
Okay. So you go ahead. I got a few, but once again, we heard from Jack again on our with some more questions. And I love Jack's questions because they're always like make me really think. Like they test sometimes the really the limits of some of my occult knowledge and trying to
they test if your degrees actually mean anything.
What? No, we're talking about the occult now. Anyway, but there's a lot. So let's get to it.
Hey, Austin and Mike, hope you're doing well. I'm reaching out with a listener question on troubleshooting your magic. From a previous episode where you were covering mistakes you've made, Austin mentioned that he had spells fizzle out and even just not work. I'm sure that's been an experience of a lot of practitioners and witches. So I was requesting if you could do an episode on why spells may fail or just work differently. You can cover things such as one's own spirits, diagnoses, checking your links, checking materia, resistance, etc. I have my own scenario with this. I had recently done a better business spell to increase sales. However, my sales hadn't really increased, but instead I have people giving me cash and instances where bills have been reduced. And don't get me wrong, I'm not complaining, but it's definitely confused me because my petition/statement and intent was so clear on increased sales for X amount. For some context, I employed an angelic ritual coupled with some Jupiterial work. And prayers that went on for a sequence of days.
Specific shit.
So I'm wondering if all this was in vain. My own divination says that I should let the magic go and focus on good things happening, but I can't help to think why a different manifestation in a sense after all that work, or in the case is a slow manifestation. Is it a case of slow manifestation? That's what they meant. Okay. Another thing I was thinking is my own spirits blocking the roads to push me into another direction pertaining to income. Is this something that can happen? I'm so sorry if this seems kind of all over the place, but thank you for all you do.
Yeah, this is a lot. So
yeah,
can you go back up and we'll go through this piece by piece because I want to make sure we don't miss anything.
Well, I'm just going to say that doing an episode on why spells may fail or just work differently, no one can really determine that until you sit down and you do divination. So,
but they give us some good examples or some good things to clarify.
So
I think it's fair for us. Let's go through those.
So one is one's own spirits. I do believe that some of our spirits can get in the way of that, but if you have a spirit who's actively trying to block your magic, that should automatically lead you to a conversation with that spirit and why, which means divination. Divine.
Yes. I think sometimes, if we put faith in some of the spirits that we do work with, and we believe in them to be spiritual allies, they are our spirits as we consider them positively connected to us. I will also say that I think that a lot of the times those spirits do get in the way. They can interfere with the way that our magic works because I think that they have the ability to see that sometimes the things that we work for with our magic are really not the best things for us. I think that a lot of people, and me included, I think most of us, most magical practitioners will have that memory or that moment they get to where they look back on something that they've done and they'll realize like, oh, got it. At the time, this was something that I really thought I needed, or this was the best way I thought to do this, or I was so caught up in my emotion, my anger, whatever. Like there really just wasn't, and then in hindsight, of course, is always 2020, right? We then have the ability to say, like, oh wow, no, I really didn't need that. That wasn't the best way to do this, and so I think that sometimes spirits have the ability to see other aspects of our life, other aspects of the situations that we're trying to manipulate with our magic that we don't in the
Mhm.
moment. And so I think that because of that, if they are truly spirits that are working with us, they're trying to maybe protect us, even protect us from ourselves, right? They will get in the way sometimes.
Mhm.
They'll be like, no, 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 you think you want this now, but no, you really you don't. So it's not always a matter, I think, of spirits like interfering just to be troublesome
Yeah.
or to run counter to our will. So I'm sorry, I needed to say that because I think that actually, to be honest, is something that happens more often than not.
Mhm.
I mean, at least when we're anticipating that our spirits have somehow gotten in the way.
Yeah.
It's not a bad thing.
Diagnoses. How best to find what went wrong? Again, divination.
Divination.
Divination is the best way, but this all comes down to the preparation for the spell and the work you're doing. If you're doing like you used an example of like Jupiterian and angelic influences, if you're doing that type of work, or if you're trying to do some sort of working around that, you want to make sure that things are actually in alignment with it and that you're doing it fairly traditionally. And then there are also some things that aren't fairly traditional. So um, you want to divine, but the way you can avoid that is to get to a point where you are familiar enough with the components, the spirits that you're working with or not working with, and your own energy, that you can kind of figure out where that went wrong. But also it comes down to trusting yourself. Getting your incantation, you know wrong, if you're just kind of spouting one off, doesn't necessarily a bad spell make.
Um, yes. Okay. What I was going to add to that, and it really is kind of just addressing a different piece of that, but since you brought it up again just now, this Saltine mentioned that they work specifically with Jupiterian and angelic energies.
Mm-hmm.
This work, and that's wonderful. I know that's I love that. Um, I think though, particularly when they mentioned in their letter to us, that they were seeing very different results.
Mm-hmm.
Like they were still seeing prosperity, but they were seeing different results or different things, or things coming in ways that they hadn't anticipated or didn't really want. Well, I shouldn't say didn't want, but yeah, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think the reason for that, and this isn't going to go back into kind of tagging onto what you were just saying around like how we prepare for a spell, right? And how we learn, we need to learn specifically kind of about all the things that go into or that we're going to factor into spell work. And in this situation, I wanted to say, and I thought this earlier when you were first reading this, is that angelic energies in particular, like these are beings that tend to work with like very broad strokes,
Yeah.
right? Which is wonderful because if we're working with them, particularly around like accomplishing like really big, like world and life changing kinds of things, right? They're really good. That's really kind of where they excel. That's really where their power lies in magic. Um, but they can get lost on like the details and the pieces. Most angels are not going to understand, like if you're doing a spell for money specifically around work, that angel is probably not going to understand the intricacies or the details of what you do in your job. I shouldn't say they won't understand. They're not going to care. They're not going to care about the intricacies of your work, and how to change those things in a way that would then yield maybe a raise or more money coming from work or job, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like they tend to be just very broad or very big picture
Yeah.
in the way that they kind of work for things. And Jupiter, I think, is very similar. Those planetary intelligences are also kind of very broad stroke kinds of magical allies. So this situation, to be honest, rather than going with that route, I probably would have maybe suggested instead maybe focusing on ancestors, focusing on spirits that are a little closer to mortal, who would have a deeper understanding of what it was to have to work for your money,
Mm-hmm.
and what it was to have to worry about how you're going to pay for your bill. I just, and I'm not faulting what this person did. I whatever they is great. But I'm wondering if that's maybe again why they're kind of seeing
Mhm.
slightly different results.
Well, that's a good segue because Mike made a really good point where it's like if you're doing stuff that's very earthly, very much very personal, working with spirits that are obviously going to be closer or spirits that know the plea for money and know the plea to get food on the table, they're going to be much more helpful and much more they're going to be more influential than, something that's like, oh, you want more money? Okay, well, you found $1. That's more money.
Well, would you agree? I mean, what's your thought on this? Because you as someone who would have a slightly different perspective on this than I would. I'm looking at this from the perspective of chaos magician. We are both witches, but we are other things, right? So I'm looking at this kind of more from the slant of chaos magician. And I'm very curious about how you would think of this in the terms of maybe like conjuring, okay, particularly around ancestral. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I believe, and I base my belief off a lot of conversations that I've had with other people who have gotten into magical practice and spiritual belief, but also based upon my own experiences. I believe that there are a lot of people out there who look at, the idea of like, oh, I'm going to bring magical allies in. I want to work with spirits. And they look at something like an angel, right? Which we know angels are exceedingly powerful,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, they're one of the spiritual energies out there that really has almost no rival when it comes to the power that they hold and what they can do, right? Or I'm going to look at my ancestors. And I think that there are a lot of people that look at those two and they go, well, clearly the angel's going to be more powerful, right? But when we look at our ancestors, I think sometimes we tend to discount exactly what that means because when we're talking about ancestors, you're talking about thousands and thousands and thousands of souls
Mm-hmm.
who have known what it is to experience human suffering, to experience fear, to experience need and hunger, and to try to survive mortality in the world that we live in, right? And so I think it comes down to not necessarily which of those is the more powerful. It's kind of like choose the right tool for the job,
Yeah.
right? Like if I need to put a screw into a piece of wood, I'm not going to reach for a hammer. I'm going to grab my screwdriver, right? Because that's the right tool for the job.
Or your drill.
Exactly right. Well, same thing, right? So anyway, so I guess what I'm saying is, and I'm getting back to you on that, like, what's your take on that? Because I think people tend to discount spirits like ancestors for other things that they believe are going to be better or bigger, more powerful. Right?
I would agree with that. From a conjuring root perspective, you have a ladder that you kind of go up. You have your ancestors first, and then you have the ancestors of the ancestors. So like you have your ancestors, which are your immediate dead that are around you, ancestors of blood and bone. Then you have your ancestors of spirit and heart. And ancestors of spirit and heart are going to be like mighty dead as well.
Yeah.
Where you'd have like Harriet Tubman, uh, certain other spirits. And then from there, you have the governing force of the other spirits that surround that. In some traditions, you're going to, in some conjure traditions, they're going to be one thing or the other. But then as you go and you move forward, you have the overall power. You have saints, but then above that, you have God or source or supreme flying spaghetti monster or whatever.
Dude, our saltines don't need to see your weighing. Come on, move.
So
thank you. Don't be making trouble now.
So you do kind of have a ladder you go up, but your ancestors are like your first, like they're first usually.
Yeah.
Just because they're there.
Yeah. Well, they're the closest to us.
Exactly.
They can't help but be close to us because we are them.
Exactly.
I had a weird thought as you were explaining that. You were talking about Mighty Dead, and you were like, you made the example of Mama Tubman.
Uh-huh.
And I was thinking of like other
or General Tubman rather.
Well, however you may want to refer to her. There are so many, right? But it occurred to me, if I were someone that considered, oh, ma'am, management's gonna have to go outside. They're getting on my nerves. If I were someone that wanted to work with Jesus and identified him as mighty dead, would that technically make me a Christian? No, there's really no answer to that. It's rhetorical. I just thought that was kind of funny though, because I'm waiting for that person now. Be like, Jesus is among my mighty dead. And I'm like, okay, I think that's great. Right?
I mean, that would, like, if I'm looking at that, that would make sense because Jesus.
You're so drunk.
I was thinking Jesus,
so
but then I
drunk.
was thinking Yeshua, and that's what
Yes,
happened.
yes, you.
Jesus was mortal.
Yes.
Jesus was mortal, was human, who just so happened to have a plug into superpowers.
Oh, okay. I was like, what kind of plug are we talking about?
He may have had one of those. I don't know. I wasn't there.
Now we're just being sacrilegious.
But technically Jesus or Christ would be mighty dead.
Yeah.
Or more apt in New Age terms, an ascended master.
Yeah, but we don't need to go there because that's just disgusting and wrong. Shall we get back to our question?
Yes.
Sorry for the tangent.
Let's see. Checking your links, checking materia, resistance. So we've actually already kind of gone over these. If you're feeling resistance, it's always going to be from that external source. Or I'm not even going to say that. If you're feeling resistance in a spell work, that's internal. That is going to be internal. I mean, yeah, there can be external sources that you're working against.
Yeah.
But as a witch, those external sources should be to you.
Well, there's a lot that goes into that, though, I think, or I should say there are a lot of different reasons for why we might be anticipating or experiencing resistance. I think that a lot of the times it comes down to like an inner insecurity and a lack of confidence, right? Which will for sure already have us kind of feeling like, oh, this isn't working. This isn't working, right? But I also know, and this is going to probably make me sound like a little bit of an elitist kind of. Oh, hello. Oh, I thought you were going away.
Yeah,
somewhere. This is going to make me sound like a little bit of like an elitist, like not an elitist. Which am I going to say? Like, going to make me sound kind of like a arrogant, like a snotty, arrogant kind of magical practitioner. And I really don't mean this to sound this way.
He totally does.
No, I don't. No, because it's really, to me, this comes down more to practice and results, okay, than really individual approach, right? I know a lot of people, I've met a lot of people, we interact with these people pretty regularly through the shop, where they come in and they buy their chime candle, and I'm not crapping on buying chime candles. I use chime candles for things, okay? But they buy their chime candle and they take that home and they hold it in their hand and they visualize what's going to happen, right? The outcome of what they want, right? And then they light that candle, and they let it burn, and there's no other effort made. And then nothing happens. And they're like, well, I did a spell. It's like, no, you didn't. You lit a candle. You lit a candle. You didn't do a spell. And so I guess where I'm saying a moment ago, this might make me sound kind of like an arrogant or kind of like a magical kind of a snobby kind of a practitioner, is I think there are a lot of people out there that think that right there, that's magic. And it isn't. You just lit a candle. Like you didn't bring in any your other correspondences and alignments. You didn't do any personal work to raise energy. You haven't, hey, enough. That's the third time I've had to correct you guys. One more time. I'm serious. You're going away. So there's that piece as well. And I also know that a lot of times when people are anticipating or they're feeling like they're sensing resistance, I think sometimes maybe that could be a reason why, is they did the thing and they think they fired off a spell and they didn't. There really is no active energy working toward that goal for you because you didn't do it right. Or you didn't do it in a way that really is going to manifest anything, right? And so you're sitting there thinking, oh, well, my spell just didn't work. Or, oh, well, there's something working against my spell. And it's like, and none of that is true because you didn't do a spell to begin with. Damn animals, man. Anyway, so that's one of the other things that I noticed. I also want to say, and this is going to be kind of like a little bit of a tip as well. Something that I have done over the years, and again, I think this is a component of I'm gonna kill these animals. I cannot deal. I cannot deal. Hey, enough. Just to be clear, I did not hit an animal. I just bopped that on the couch. I would not have hit them with a pillow. I try to make sure I only use knives and hammers when I have to hit them. Anyway, where was I? So anyway, I think a lot of people also think, and this gets tricky because you can absolutely do a spell and have it be like a one and done kind of situation, right? Where like
Mhm.
I did my spell, I did it properly, right? And I sent it out, and now I trust that it's going to work, right? And no, that's great. That's great. And more often than not, that should be the spell that you do, right? But if you're working on a situation where you kind of need to see continuous growth, continuous effort, continuous whatever, you probably don't want to do a one and done spell. If you need just a quick change, your one and dones are wonderful for that, right? But if you need to see something change and then sustain that change, and even beyond that, see that change continue to grow, you might need to do the kind of spell work where you do it, but it's not done. You kind of come back to it, you revisit it. So it's almost like kind of like an incremental kind of a spell, right? Where you've got some item of focus to hold the charge for your spell, right? As it's continuing to grow. And you continue, like you come back to it each week, right? Jar spells are a perfect example of this, right? Where you come back to them each week, you pray over them again, you light another candle, you do the, you pick them up, you shake them, right? Where you continue to add energy. And I think that that kind of a process is actually a more constructive approach to a situation where we see resistance or we might anticipate resistance.
Yeah.
It kind of comes down, I think, to you got to kind of look at the situation and what you're trying to see achieved, right? If you're going to go up against a situation that would be a big problem in the life of most people, right? If you're looking at a big problem, you're facing kind of like a big monster, you need to make sure that you bring some big work to that and that you have a good strategy.
Mhm.
And that might be something, that strategy might be one that you need to continue to kind of revisit and check and add more power, add more power, add more power, right? It's more of a I guess you could say it's kind of more of approaching it like I'm fighting a war, I'm not trying to win a battle, right?
Yeah.
Right. So anyway, so I'm wondering sometimes if that's also maybe what happens with people. They're like I sent this energy out, but you sent out this you're dealing with like a brick wall, and you
And you threw a water balloon at it.
yeah, and you threw a water balloon at it, exactly. Perfect example. Thank you, Ben. Okay. Anyway, sorry. That's
So really, that's it. Okay, so we answered that one.
okay.
Okay. Hello, Austin and Michael. First and foremost, thank you for answering my last question with such clarity. It helped me greatly during the winter, and I hope I was able to help others as well. As always, I want to give my consent to use this story on the podcast. If you would like to use my name, I ask that you use the name Karamia, as it is my nickname, rather than using my legal name. My question this time is both specific and broad. On a general level, I would love to see y'all do an episode talking about Italian folk practices, or even another episode on the Roman Lucifer. We've already done one on the Roman Lucifer.
Well, they said another one.
Oh, okay.
We could do that. It's funny because I was actually just looking at my notes for my Italian folk magic class that I teach, because we were looking at I was scheduling upcoming classes. So it's just kind of synchronistic that this kind of popped up.
Okay, cool. I mean, that's a sign. I usually listen to your original episode on him when I need a moment to reconnect, and I would love to hear y'all share more stories and knowledge about him if y'all are comfortable. My more specific question is if you have any advice on how to use the rosary in more witchy ways. I've recently come into possession of a rosary and I want to incorporate it into my practice, but the whole thing seems very confusing. I've read how to do it traditionally, and I've listened to other Italian folk practitioners' advice on how to pray it, but I'm not sure if there is any way to modify a process while remaining respectful to the tradition. As someone who takes things very literally, being given the directions to ponder the mysteries doesn't really provide much clarity on what I'm doing.
That's
Any
my favorite
advice is
answer.
appreciated. As always, it's a pleasure to be a Saltine, and I look forward to your episode popping up in my notifications. Thank you for your time. Garamia. All right.
So we will help me remember to do that. We will do an episode where we kind of dig into Italian folk magic or Italian folk witchcraft.
Okay.
We'll do that. Maybe we can do that even next
week. Okay.
But for now, let's talk about this rosary thing.
I love rosaries. I love them because they're such a good focus for practice.
Okay, well, we understand that. But how do you use them? The question was, how do you use them?
So you could do it the traditional way. The traditional, which is you need to have at least, I think it's like 3 or 4 prayers memorized. You need your Our Father. You need the Lord's Prayer, Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done in heaven. You need your Hail Marys. Hail Mary, full of grace, blessed art thou, blessed is the
People can research these. You
yes.
don't need to recite these.
Hail Mary. You need your Apostles' Creed. I think that's it. And if you're gonna do the rosaries like an Italian folk practitioner, an Italian folk practitioner is not gonna align themselves to like on this day you pray this particular rosary unless they're trying to do something specific. Usually, how my nonna did it, and this is just how I was taught by her, is you have those prayers down. She didn't do Hail Marys, she did Hail Dianas. And each bead, as you're doing that, as you're praying, as you're focusing, it's not that you are saying a particular prayer for a particular thing. The prayers are like incantations, they're like mantras. They're supposed to help keep your mind focused, which is why they need to be memorized. It needs to be muscle memory. And the article of fascination is the beads. And as you go through and as you do it, I think Scout has a crush on Toby.
I mean, cute, but also behave.
So
the ticking of the bead, though.
Yeah.
As you're doing that, you say your prayer, you tick a bead. You say your prayer, you tick a bead.
Yeah.
It has something to do, I think, with the kind of repetitive trance-inducing
yes
work.
Well, that's what it's for.
When we try to, when we're doing prayer, when we're doing these kinds of things, right? So it's, but to be honest, that's the same way that a Catholic is working with their rosaries, right? I did think it was interesting you mentioned the prayers, because you can absolutely, and they mentioned this in their question, kind of Mia answered or said this in their question, you can absolutely modify those prayers.
Oh, of course.
Those do not need to be the textbook Catholic prayer. You mentioned that your nonna said Diana instead of Mary.
Yeah.
Right. So you can absolutely modify those things as you need to for your own work. You don't even need to use traditional prayers. You can come up with your own things to go through as you're taking your beads. Right. So there's nothing wrong with that. You're not doing anything sacrilegious. Right. Remember, the rosary was something that was created by men. That wasn't anything that was gifted by God. Right. God, spirit, angels, whatever, they don't care. You use your rosary however you want to.
And that's the thing, is it's used for trance-inducing focus.
But it does have other uses.
Yes, it does.
That's kind of what I want to talk about. One of the other things that I have found really effective over the years with rosaries, as I have incorporated them into my own magical work, is they are very good for creating small boundaries around things.
Yes.
I have incorporated them successfully into spells where I've built kind of like the central focus, or like my altar around what I'm doing. Usually for protection, I find this works really well. And then what I'll do is I'll actually like lay my rosary, or I'll spread the necklace part. Like I'll put that around, right? So it kind of creates like a line, right? And I'll do other things as well. But that is a very physical, like there is now a perimeter to mark the protection, right? And I'm not, just to be clear, I did not cast a fucking circle, right? It's not about that, okay? It's about having something in there that visually and physically represents, I have now created a barrier around this person.
Yeah.
Right. So you can use that for that. I've also found that they are very good for what doing. Rosaries are, I think, also can work very effectively as pendulums.
Yes.
I've used them for binding things.
Okay.
Particularly if the rosary includes a medallion or some other iconography that would be a representation of a particular saint, or kind of a synchronistic representation of another spirit or god or goddess that I know also has the ability to hold and bind and grasp things, right? I've used them for binding. They're excellent for, oh God, I'm trying to think of all the other ways that you can incorporate these things now. Do you have any other ideas? What else have you done with them other than actually just counting them, the beads?
I've used them I have used them as a I guess it's kind of like a pendulum. I actually have a Lucifer rosary that you got me, and I've used that to uh move energy or trap something. Um, so I mean, you can use them any way. It's just another talisman. It's just another amulet. It's just another charm. What I would suggest if you're getting caught up on the rosary is if you're using a traditional rosary where you have the decades, follow just the flat out plain rosary, memorize it, and then while you're doing that, you should be holding focus on the intention that you're doing. It should be used to trance to induce, but it's just a tool.
Mhm.
You know, if you want a really good book, Burn a Black Candle is a really good book on, and it has an entire section on like rosaries and stuff.
Yep.
So,
all right,
that was a good question. All right, my last question. Okay. Mike and Austin, I appreciate you and I'm grateful for the free education that you provide. I have a few questions. If you use these questions on the podcast, please keep my name anonymous on the show. Thank you. I joined a coven about a year ago. Recently, the leader of our coven has suggested me and several others that he discovered he's God in a human body.
oh,
This is the first major red flag I've seen. He said he confirmed this
only
using
the
his
first.
divination tools. He also had another coven member confirm it. I'm skeptical. I'm open-minded to the idea that this might be our gods testing him. I also want to create my exit strategy. I left dysfunctional groups before, but I've never left a coven before.
Okay, hold on. Okay, stop there. Let's address this. Okay, the first thing that I want to say around these people who are like self-appointed like deities, people who proclaim themselves God, okay, that's not how that shit works. Okay, gods don't proclaim themselves gods.
Correct.
That title comes from the people who put their faith in that spirit. We identify gods. Prior to that, they're just another form of life. They're just another spirit, a very different and maybe, yes, certainly more powerful one. But we identify spirits as gods. So these people who like to proclaim themselves gods, that is mental illness. That's mental illness.
Yeah.
To an alarming capacity. Like that is, I'm honestly surprised they said this was their first red flag. Because anybody who is going to go from like, I'm perfectly sane and normal to I'm fucking crazy, I'm God incarnate, surely there were little things along the way, you know. I don't know, but I'm very sorry that this has been their experience. Anyway, but yes, remember that gods don't proclaim themselves gods. We proclaim those spirits gods. Then they in turn are like, yeah, okay, actually, yeah, if you want to worship me as a god, great, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
How is leaving a dysfunctional coven different from leaving any other group? What are my responsibilities? First and foremost, you have to check any vows or oaths you've done. Now, here's the thing: it depends on your tradition. It depends on it depends on your tradition. Is this a legitimate coven, or is this just a group of people who are like, yeah, we're friends, and now we are a coven? Because if that's the case, there's nothing.
Well, you elaborate on it though, because I think some people get confused about that. And I guess what you mean by tradition is this something that has been structured and something that has involved vows and commitments that are not just about the humans in the group, but also about spirits. Because when we take vows, while we make those to the other people, the other humans in the group, those vows are also made to the spirits. And over time, it'll be the spirits that'll fuck you up if you break your vows.
Exactly. Okay. So, but if it's just, oh, we're a group of friends and we decided, like, yeah, we like tarot cards, crystals, and magic, that's not a coven. That's a friend group. Okay. So you can leave it however you want. But the easiest way to leave something like this is you just simply say, I feel my path personally is going in a different direction. I wish you all the best, and I'm going, and I will be leaving, and I will make sure that I keep any vows or oaths that I have made as such. And then you will want to perform a cleansing. And if there was an actual initiation, then the leaders of that covenant are going to need to perform a cord cutting.
Oh, please don't say cord cutting. Ugh.
That's what it is.
People get confused. No, because not every fucking tradition utilizes cords to mark rank. You're talking Wicca here.
Well,
or English tradcraft.
No, I'm talking the spiritual
cord.
cord.
Okay, well, so can we use a different term though? Because people
You will need to be cut away.
People already get so confused over what cord cuttings are thanks to the fucking New Agers.
Well, so, no, not New Agers, but also, you know, all the TikTok witches out there tying two candles together, lighting them on fire,
exactly.
and fire.
So let's not create greater confusion.
That's some stupid.
It's not a cord cutting. It's a ritual process of removing you from basically nullifying the vows that you made and removing you from the coven, so that the spirits of that coven, if it has an established tradition, will not eat you alive for breaking your vows.
Yes, basically,
after you leave the coven.
Basically, that it's a ritual that will then mark you as outsider instead of insider.
Thank you.
Are there any mythology and folklore examples of gods in human bodies? The easy example is Jesus, and he knew that he was a god from childhood, which suggests to me that my coven leader should have known he was a god way before his 40s. I've read about a few examples from India as well. And in all those instances, the person knew that they were a god from childhood.
That's also wrong. Jesus never proclaimed himself a god. There are, I think, a lot of mistranslations, but Jesus never proclaimed himself a god. He taught quite a bit about his connection to divinity and how, through the work that he was doing as a teacher and as a healer, how he was likened unto a god because he believed in and he taught that the things that he was teaching, the ways that he wanted people to live, that these were in turn the things that God wanted for people to live, or how to live and to behave. Okay, but Jesus never proclaimed himself a god. And I know there'll be people out there that'll be like, oh, but I found this actual verse in a Bible that says this. And I'm like, that is a mistranslation. If you go back to earlier interpretations and translations of the original text, you will see that Jesus never proclaims himself a god. When we look at, and I got a degree in divinity theology, so I'm telling you, I can talk about this shit. Okay, when you're looking at Eastern concepts of divinity or gods as they take human form, we have to also understand that the Eastern concept of divinity and what a god would be is going to be quite a bit different than, they say, like the Christian God. Like, it really is not fair. And I want to be very clear in explaining this. It's not to say, and about what I've been trying to say, it's not to say that one version of God is better than another, or that one type of God is more powerful than another, or more accurate or right than another. But you really cannot compare the concept of God as it exists in Christianity and Abrahamic faith. You cannot compare that to the way that you would see gods being believed in, worshipped, and viewed in Eastern spiritualities, like Hinduism. You know, there are many, right? Jainism, there are many, right? Like, these are very different things. And so when you see depictions or you see representations of gods in Eastern spiritualities and religions, like, this is a person who was a living god, a human, immortal god. That's not the case at all. They may have been an avatar. They may have been a physical embodiment of that god's power on earth, but they were not the god themselves. Yeah. Those, and I understand the confusion there. Because those are things I think that confuse a lot of people. But no, we do not see gods incarnating into human form, and even in situations where maybe something like that were to happen, that wouldn't be like a long term, like they're going to live a whole life. They're going to live a whole mortal life as a god in a human form. Why would that ever happen? Why would that ever need to happen? Why would any deity choose to limit themselves and their experience of all that is by locking themselves into a teeny tiny little mortal body.
Well, and how would they have the ability to do the things that they're supposed to do?
Well, and the thing is they're a god, you know, and if we believe in things like multidimensionality, it's possible that they could be assuming in that form and also still doing all the other things that they need to. But that would be something that would, again, would be very temporary. Like, they don't need to be human. They don't need to have mortal experiences. They don't need to exist in our world in that capacity. So these ideas are dangerous. These are the basis for cults. You know, this is very much a Jonestown kind of a vibe right here. And this person needs to get the fuck away from this coven and this coven leader, because this person is dangerous. The next step is you're all buying matching jumpsuits and drinking poison fucking Kool-Aid. Except I always remember learning recently that it wasn't Kool-Aid, it was something else. It was a different kind of drink. Like, it was like Kool-Aid, but it wasn't Kool-Aid.
Country Time lemonade.
I don't know. No, it was kind of like Kool-Aid, but like it was like a knockoff or a generic version.
Tang.
So
I love Tang as well.
Anyway, yeah, it wasn't really cool.
They still make Tang,
but they still make Tang. Oh. I mean, I haven't had it in, God, I think the last time I had Tang, I must have been like, no, actually, that's not true. I had Tang, but it was mixed in an alcoholic drink. Does that count?
Yes.
Okay.
That's adult Tang.
Okay. Adult. I love adult Tang. It's like adultine, only it's adult Tang, which sounds and is a lot more fun.
Okay. I'm a medium. While I was a solitary.
Is this the same thing?
Yes.
Okay.
This is the same person.
Same person. Okay.
I'm a medium. While I was a solitary practitioner, I went through spiritual psychosis. I spent way too much time talking to spirits, not enough time with humans, and I lost my grip on reality. I was manic for about 2 months. I was a danger to myself and others. In recovery, I've been collecting reality anchors. I want to avoid repeating psychosis. The reality anchors that I have currently are a strong attachment to the folklore and mythology of my tradition, and teaching myself about the anatomy of science and psychosis. Do you have any suggestions for reality anchors?
Like, the components of life that make you human are ultimately going to be your best reality anchors. Because the thing with reality anchors, the concept of what they're talking about here, and this is good. This is a good thing. This is a good therapy mechanism, or a mechanism for therapy and recovery. Okay, but the challenging thing with reality anchors, like the ones that you have kind of chosen, is those are all really kind of geared, or they're not geared. Let me start this over. The reality anchors that this person has chosen, those things, right? Those things that are helping them to maintain a sense of reality, those are good things until they prove not to be, which is what's happening with their tradition and their coven. Okay. And that right there is the example of where I'm going with this, that the things that we need to choose in our lives that help us to kind of maintain a grip on reality, they cannot be things that are also in some way abstract or transient things in our lives. They need to be things that are going to be more permanent or based in physicality. So your mortality is an anchor in reality, right? The fact that you have bills that you need to pay to sustain yourself in your life, so you probably need to have a job, that's a reality anchor, right? The fact that you have meaningful relationships with your friends and your family, right? That's a reality anchor. Right? Like, these are the things that you want to make anchors, or that you want to grab a hold of to maintain a connection to reality. Because other things, like your belief in your tradition, your belief is an abstraction, right? It's very real for you, right? But unless you're actually having concrete experiences every day that are reconfirming that belief for you, sooner or later, that's going to be a problem, because belief is always shifting and changing, in addition to being an abstract kind of a thing, right? So those are good. That's going to be my recommendation. I think you need to look at the other things in your life, be it healthy, constructive people in your life who are a positive influence for you, right? Not your would-be God coven leader. Ugh. Okay. The other commitments that you need to keep in your life that, are maybe not things that we always enjoy. Like, trust me, I don't enjoy the fact that I have to live in a world where I have to work 60 hours a week to pay my fucking bills. right? That I have to do that. I don't want to have to live in a world like that, right? Where I need to be constantly hustling to make money to survive, right? That sucks. That's the reality, right? You can't fight reality, even if you want to. Sooner or later, it's going to get you.
Reality can be shitty sometimes,
So, yeah,
but reality can also be really, really awesome.
absolutely.
So, you know, things that have a sense of permanence, um, like that's one of the reasons why in spring and as the earth starts to wake up, I like to be outside. I like to try and get my hands in the ground
Ew.
and stuff like that, because it might be something that grows different every year. Things might yield differently, but the reality is that is there.
I'm very glad to hear this because we have a whole shit ton of spring cleanup that needs to be done.
Well, we're hiring someone for that. I'm just going to plant things.
So we're having them come and do a little bit of that, but they're not doing everything for that.
That's fine. Whatever. Okay. I would love to visit if I could, but I'm on the East Coast. I hope both of you are well. Don't forget to vote today. Sincerely, they asked me to keep them anonymous. So,
Yes. Well, this has been sitting here for a couple weeks.
Um,
Well,
no, this came through today.
Did it? Oh, okay. Yeah, we actually voted 2 weeks ago. We all voted different at different times in different states. Yeah, like we voted a couple weeks back. Anyway, yes, but thank you for the reminder,
Yes.
because of voting is important.
Yes,
For all the rest
vote.
of our saltines, please vote. Please vote.
Yes.
You know,
Witchcraft is political. It starts here.
Yep, for sure.
All right. Those are the only listener questions we have.
Oh, that you've got.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So I got a few here. Okay. I want to say really quickly to that person, like, hopefully they don't feel like I was yelling at them. I really wasn't. I was not yelling at you. If anything, I think I got a little impassioned because I'm concerned for you. You really, like, you seem like you kind of have inadvertently, you've kind of found yourself connected or now working with at least one person who is the sounds like the prime candidate to take advantage of
Cult leader
and harm you. So, oh God, so please just be so careful. Okay, please. Oh God, just the trouble that oof. Okay. Ugh, okay, I'm gonna shut up now. Okay. All right. Question from, they say we can call me Ishmael. No, the name Maria. You can call me Maria. My pronouns are she, her.
Hi, Maria.
Hello, Maria. They hope that this is the right way to ask a listener question. There is no wrong way to ask a listener question. There really, it just comes down to, are you asking us in a way that where we'll actually get your question? Which is why I keep telling people, don't message us through Spotify, because Spotify sucks ass. At least for their ability to communicate with you, our saltines. Question: how do you know if a spell was successful? I know that sounds silly, but I'm a beginner and I'm a skeptical person, which is always good. Skepticism is always a good thing. Okay. And I don't know when, so I don't know when I can document the spell as a success in my grimoire, or if the desired outcome was random and bound to happen anyway. So a little bit of self-doubt happening here, maybe a little bit of over-analysis. Okay. If the spell did work, let's see, hold on one second. Might have been bound to happen anyway. Or if the spell did work, hold on, this doesn't quite read. Or if I did something wrong and maybe the spell backfired, they give us a story. And I don't know that I want to go into all the details of the story. But let's get back to the core of the question. So based on what happened, so just to paraphrase, they did a spell that was supposed to have, one effect, and in turn, like, kind of like the very opposite kind of happened. Okay. And I think that there could be a lot going into a situation like that. I think sometimes that we need to be careful in the way that we craft a spell, and we need to be careful for what we ask for and what our intention is for that spell. Right. We can do a spell in essence where so here's an example that I had happen a few years ago. Okay. I had a woman do a spell because she was just kind of getting into witchcraft, this client of mine, and she was all about personal empowerment. And a big component of this was that she wanted to be able to kind of take back some of the power that she felt that she had lost over the years, as she had been kind of like the victim of some sexual assault.
Mhm.
You know, she had dealt with a lot of things like that over the course of her life, right? Are you good?
I think the dogs need to go outside.
I think that's actually a really good idea. We're going to take a quick break. Be right back.
All right, your client.
We're back. Yeah, so I had this client who like was going through this process of like healing, you know, and to her credit, like she was working with a therapist, right?
Good.
I think to be honest, actually her therapist and the work she was doing with her like mental health was actually kind of what led her to witchcraft, which is actually really cool.
Okay.
I love to see that. I've seen that happen a lot of times over the years. I think there's just something mental health, like therapy, mental health work, and witchcraft, the personal growth that we do as a component of traditional witchcraft practice. Oh god, they work so well together. They work so well together. If people will do both, right? That's a truly holistic way to get your shit taken care of. But so anyway, so she'd been through all of this past abuse, right? And so she does this spell, right? And in this spell, she talks about, you know, she structured this in such a way. She used components, she called upon spirits, she did this way, and the whole thing basically was like she was like, I'll never be a victim again. It was kind of like the thing, like this was kind of something she did for personal empowerment, right? But as a component of that, she also wanted to do kind of like this banishing, where she was like I there will no one in my life, I will never have to deal with another abuser, right? The thing is that she was in a relationship with someone who was not like domestic, like physically abusing her. But as is often the case, people who have gone through years and years and years of abuse, they get to a point where they create patterns of personal behavior. Like it's almost like they continue to allow abusers into their lives, right? It's kind of like empaths always running into narcissists, right? Like this weird fucked up, you know, positive, negative kind of thing, right? Anyway, so what happened when she did the spell is she made it very clear to whatever she was working with, like, nope, no more abusers in my life. And then her relationship fell apart. And you know, and she talked to me. I didn't hear about this until like months later, because she was with it enough. She figured out pretty quickly what had happened. She's like, when I did my spell, I didn't anticipate, I hadn't anticipated that my relationship partner would be among the list of people that were going to be banished. He said, I realized that yes, that he was probably not the healthiest partner, but in her mind, she didn't.
It's better than what she had.
She didn't relate the things he was doing to her on the same level of abuse as abuse she had experienced prior.
Yeah.
So for her, she was like, well, this is just how people are.
Yeah.
This is just how men are. This is just how our relationship works, right? At least he's not raping me. He's not beating me, right? But he was abusive in other ways, right? And, you know, anyway, he was gone, right? And so she figured this out. But I remember having a conversation with her after that, where she was kind of relating this experience. And she was like, my focus wasn't clear. I wasn't clear enough in what I asked for. You know, I sent this energy out there. And she said, and long term, like the aftermath of that, I can honestly say that yes, this still was for the best, because I needed to get out of that relationship. It was also very unhealthy for me. But this isn't what I asked for. And for a little while after it happened, she thought she had done something wrong, kind of like this situation here.
Yeah.
So, and really she hadn't. I think the biggest issue is she just wasn't clear enough or specific enough in what she needed to see happening, the manifestation of her intent for that spell. Right.
Yeah.
So anyway, so that's an example, or one that I always think back on. So getting back to Maria's situation here, okay? I don't think that your situation is one where you did anything wrong. And in fact, with some of the details that you shared, your story, you actually did see some things change, I think, in response. This to me, I think that there are a couple of things going on. One, I think this is a classic example of how it probably would have been better for you from the beginning to go to HR and talk about this, to handle this in a mundane way before you went the magical way, right? And I'm not faulting you for going magic route first. I'm not saying you did anything wrong, but I think that from the way you've shared, when you started to actually see the results you wanted, that's now happening after you handle things in the mundane way, right? We don't always want to go right to magic. Okay. We all need to kind of remember that. I have to remind myself of that. Okay. So there's that piece. Okay. Also, I think that in looking at this, what you might have seen happen, and I don't know how exactly you structured your spell, but I'm wondering if in some way the way that you did this, you maybe you inadvertently said something about like, I want this person to like go away. Like, I want this person to no longer be in a position of power over me, at least directly in your work organization, right? Like I'm wondering, and I don't know for sure if this is the case or not, right? Because you don't quite make those details clear. But sometimes I think we need to again be very careful about what we ask for. We can, again, going back to the example that I said, like we can say something like, I want all the abusers to go away, and not realize like, oh, wow, that's also going to include this person. Or sometimes maybe it's just the definition of away, right? Like there have been a number of times over the years where I've said like, God, I need to do a banishing on this person. I want this person to go away, right? Particularly even in a situation like this, right? Because I think over the years, all of us as magical practitioners have done some sort of spell work around our jobs.
Mm-hmm.
That's such a huge part of our life. We would have to,
Yeah.
right? But I've had a similar situation to this where I was like, I need this person to go away. They make me crazy. I don't want to work with them anymore. I don't want them to be someone that I have to report to anymore. I don't want them to have this much control over my job day to day, right? And they got a promotion, like the situation you shared here. And when I revisited the way that I did that spell, I still got what I asked for. They were promoted to a different position that took them away from me, right? That put them in a situation where now I no longer had to deal with them every day, right? They no longer had direct overview of my work and my job, right? So I'm wondering if maybe something like that could be what happened here. I don't know. But no, I'm going to say, I don't think you did anything wrong. I think that this is a good example of a few things that we all need to kind of be mindful of, as I just mentioned, like how we do the spell, what we ask for specifically, and then making sure that we balance mundane with magical.
Agreed.
But anyway, I'm very happy to see from what you shared here that you are getting some sort of resolution to this. One of the other things that Austin, I'd like your take on this. When we see a situation like this, I think very often that because we tend to look at the negatives, we're so focused a lot on like, this is what's wrong with this situation. Because of that, when we go to work magic on something, what we tend to do is we tend to want to direct that at like, oh, well, I need to control what's going wrong. I need to fix what's going wrong. Right. And in this situation, just as an example, and I'm not saying this at Maria specifically, because this is just in any case, any person, right? Rather than focusing on a situation where like, this is what's wrong, I need to fix what's wrong. Maybe I think more often than not, it would actually be better to do, if you're going to go the route of magic, to use your magic to create an opportunity for yourself to get away from what's going on.
100%.
Right. So in this situation, rather than focusing your effort on dickhead who was making all the trouble and other dickhead who was enabling him to make all the trouble, it probably would have been a better use of your magic to actually do a job or to do a spell, to create another job opportunity for yourself.
Yeah.
So that you could get could get away from that situation.
Agreed.
Right. I think that that's always a healthier way to approach these things. Better for you long term, right? If you can get into a better employment situation, right? And that's also easier. Magic is very much a path of least resistance kind of thing, right? It's much easier for us to do something that affects us, knowing that we can then also follow up with additional efforts, mundane efforts, right? We want that change than to send magic out at someone who is already in a position of resistance.
Agreed.
Right? That's already going to be a harder fight.
Agreed.
Magically.
Agreed. 100%.
So, yeah. So anyway, that's all I had to say on that one.
There you go.
All right. So got one there. Let's see. I think we're gonna need to call it for tonight. We did get some questions from Jack, as I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, but I can see that we were already running a little long on tonight's episode. So we're going to save Jack's questions for next week's podcast.
Awesome.
We had a comment from one of our regulars, Panther, inquiring about mediumship. Panther wanted us to kind of talk about some like good introductory things into mediumship. And we've done a few episodes where we've talked about spirit communication already. So I'm not entirely sure necessarily what they really want us to go into more detail about there. But I do want to say, like, at least in the classes that we teach on spirit communication and mediumship, and Austin, if you want to add to this, please do, because you work as the medium in our shop at this point. I think that better places to start, to be honest, when you're developing these kinds of skills, it's not so much about the spirit communication, it's about the work that you need to do on yourself to get you to the place where you need to be able to effectively communicate with spirit. So I'm talking about exercises that help you to heighten focus, exercises that help you to kind of limit the static, the chatter, and the mental clutter that gets in the way of being able to actually clearly decipher spirit communication as it's coming through. Things that we need to do, or that we need to see happening in our lives around issues of personal balance, right? Like, do we actually have the time in our day to be able to budget a half an hour to sit down and practice, right? Do we have a quiet space that gives us the ability to focus, right? Being able to deprogram old ideas around what spirits are, how we communicate with spirits, if we indeed as individuals have the power to communicate with spirits, right? Because religion tells a lot of us that we should never do that, right? You're not supposed to talk to spirits, right? That's the priest's job, that's the monk's job, that's the whoever's job, right? They talk to spirits, that's not for you to do, right? So those are the things that you need to start with as you're kind of getting into that work, have less to do with communicating with spirits and more to do with preparing yourself.
Yes, I 100% agree with that. I'm also going to say this. Why does everyone want to be a fucking medium? I'm not being a dick. I'm not trying to cause trouble. Pamper, I love you. However, why? Why? Use your cards. Use another form of divination that is going to be just as effective for spirit communication. It's not the best thing always having dead folk talking to you. It's just not. So that's what I'm going to say to that. We can go more into detail about that, but I'm calling it an episode. I'm tired. It's been a day. I have shit I got to do.
I think we had. No, I think we're good. Yeah, we'll put a pin in that. Next week we'll answer Jack's questions and we'll talk about Italian folk magic.
Cool. Sweet. And I'll go on my mediumship rant next week. If I remember. Anyway, thank you for listening to this ramble. And happy witching.
Bye, everybody.